Hey folks, Doug Blake with Body Design University. In this video, I want to give you a definitive answer to the age-old question of when you're training, and we're talking about training clients and even for yourself, which should you do first? Should you do resistance training and then your cardio? Or should you do perhaps your cardio training first and then do your resistance training? I want to give you a definitive response to that. But before I do that, I would ask that you go ahead, make sure you subscribe to our channel. By the way, if the material that you are watching here on this particular video or any of our other videos is helpful, write the word understand in the comment box. Of course, give us, like I say, a thumbs up and let us know that we are providing useful and helpful content for you in the fitness industry, whether you are a personal trainer, right, and you're already training clients, or you are somebody that's just studying to become a personal trainer. This information can be very valuable. So let me go ahead and get started and give you the answer. Now, I know some of you are asking me this question because I get it all the time. Well, doesn't it matter what your, goals are? And my answer to that is, well, all training programs are definitively based on what the goal of the client is. In the case of whether to do your cardiorespiratory training before your resistance training, can be to a certain extent based on your goals, but it's actually more important to understand the physiology of whether you do one or the other first. Now, I will say this, right from the get-go, not everybody does their cardio, for instance, when they, in the same workout as their resistance training. I want to just make sure you understand what we're talking about here is when you are training clients, we recommend that for 45 minutes to an hour, whatever that programming design is going to look like, that you do, for the most part, some resistance training and some cardiorespiratory training. Again, if you're in a scenario where you're a competitive bodybuilder, for instance, you're probably not going to, in the same workout, do your chest and your shoulders and your triceps and then do 30 minutes of cardio. You may not be doing that. You may wait till the end of the day. You might do a double split routine, for instance. What I want to help you to understand is that when you have made the sort of the leap into a training program where you are doing both, if you're doing just cardio on your cardio day, this is not a critical video for you to watch, right? Just do cardio. If you decided that you just want to do resistance training, right, train your upper body, and you're not going to do cardio anyway that day, then this video is not going to help you with that decision-making process. But this is for the standard personal training programming that for sure we know most personal trainers are using, which is that your average client only has an hour or so 2 to 3 days a week. And if that's the case, we got to get everything in that workout. It's in that case that we will always recommend you do your resistance training first. Okay. And it doesn't even matter what type of resistance training you're doing. If you are, and I'd recommend multiple ways to train resistance training: muscle strength, muscle power, and muscle endurance. Okay. Now, generally, I'm not doing power training, but you get the idea that there are those three elements. I can do explosive power training if I'm training an athlete and I'm going to be doing cardio in the workout. I can also be doing strength training, right? Heavier resistance to tap into type 2A and type 2X fiber recruitment. And then there's muscle endurance, which is going to be more type 1 fiber recruitment, and some type 2A fiber recruitment as well. So you get the idea. When you are training definitively resistance training and cardio in the same workout, always, I don't know it. I'll be honest with you, I don't know a time. And if you can tell me, please tell me in the comments section if you get a better way where you can say, hey, Doug, here's where I would do cardio first. Please let me know, because I've been doing this for half a minute and I've never done cardio first with any client, never done it with myself. And if I have tried it to experiment with it, it doesn't work really well. So the definitive answer is always do your resistance training first. Now, the question, of course, is, well, why? And the answer is pretty straightforward from a physiological perspective. Let's start with cardio. When you do cardiorespiratory training, you are using, in general, large muscle groups, right? Let's say you're on the treadmill or on the bike. When you're doing cardiorespiratory training, even HIIT training, by the way, you are using predominantly what are known as lower threshold or type 1, in some cases type 2A muscle fibers, okay, predominantly in the muscles that are being worked. Those are called low threshold. Okay, you want to hear slow, you want to hear red muscle fibers, but you're generally using the endurance based, right? Endurance capable fibers in those particular muscles, which means that you're keeping your total power output and the total production of lactate and the total usage of glycogen in the muscles to a minimum. You are always using glycogen, ladies and gentlemen. Just understand this, even when you're doing the lowest level cardio training. So when I'm doing straight cardio training, I am accessing type 1. Let's just keep it simple. Yes, there's a gradation of muscle fiber types that are used, but you're generally using type 1 predominantly muscle fibers when you're doing that activity. So if I'm walking or I'm doing the bike and I'm trying to keep my heart rate up to like VT1, somewhere around there, you're predominantly using generally type 1, type 2A fibers, which means your glucose usage is not as high as if you're doing higher intensity strength training with resistance. So you get it. Cardiorespiratory training generally involves the use of lower threshold fibers. Those fibers will generally be using free fatty acids as a source of fuel. Doesn't mean you're not using glucose. Please understand this. I don't want to be so black and white with this that you don't understand. Of course, type 1 muscle fibers will go through the use of glucose, but generally they are using free fatty acids that go through a stage it's known as beta oxidation, which is going to be the breakdown of free fatty acids into acetyl coenzyme A, which then move into the Krebs cycle, blah, 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 into the electron transport chain, yada, yada, right? So the easiest way to remember this is that if you do cardio, you're using fat, okay? It's not that simple, I know, but just bear with me. What if you do resistance training? Resistance training, even in muscle endurance resistance training, 20 reps, 25 reps, is going to use what type of muscle fibers? Yeah, some type 1, but generally, as soon as you add resistance to an exercise or you increase the speed of your run or you start cranking out on the bike, you are going to be asking for the recruitment of what are known as higher threshold fibers, so type 2A and type 2X fibers. It is a very simple way of explaining it. It is more complicated, obviously. But for the most part, resistance training is going to access, or at least preferentially access, glycogen in your muscles, okay? Of course, you're going to access blood glucose. Of course, your body is going to access other forms of ATP producing substrates. Yes, but the dominant source, right, of ATP production coming through the anaerobic glycolytic system is going to be from blood sugar and muscle glycogen. Okay. Now, if you want to get really deep into that and scratch way below the surface and get really geeky on this, absolutely. It's very interesting, bioenergetics. I hope you get the idea. When we're explaining this to clients, it's like if you do cardio first, you're going to fatigue out your muscles that you're now going to need to train for resistance training. Not only that, but you're simply utilizing free fatty acids versus if you start with resistance training, you now tap into your glycogen stores. And as your glycogen stores start to be used up, guess what your body will start to use as a source of fuel? Free fatty acids. Not only free fatty acids that are serum free fatty acids or circulating free fatty acids from body fat stores, but you have fat stores in your muscles themselves. So the whole point here is that if I do resistance training first, I can actually tap into an energy source that I don't generally use so much of when I do cardio first. So by tapping into glycogen storage and some fat storage inside the muscles, and by depleting those glycogen stores, I get a kickover effect that's going to demand more free fatty acid usage. So you got those two worlds. So here I go, start using fat as a source of fuel in my cardio. I do that first. I do 20, 30, 40 minutes or whatever the case is. Not only am I tired and fatigued because I did some exercise, and I'm not going to be able to generally utilize as much physical output during my resistance training as I could have if I started with that first, right? But now when I go to access glycogen stores, it's not going to be as productive, so to speak, as if I started with my resistance training. So it's the fatigue aspect that really is a problem. If I do cardio, I get fatigued. I'm not going to be able to train as hard in general as I could have trained if I had started first. So if I start with resistance training first, I tap into the initial ATP producing substrates, which is going to be glycogen and blood sugar to it. So I'm basically beginning the process of tapping into and lowering glycogen stores in my muscle. Glycogen storage reduction. When I use glycogen in a muscle, it starts to kick over and trigger the use of free fatty acids. So I'm already in this high, well, moderate to high level of free fatty acid usage. Now, when I go to do my cardio training, I'm already in this relatively moderate to relatively high body fat usage predicament, right? So do my resistance training first, burn through or utilize glycogen in the muscle that I probably would not be doing a whole lot of if I started with cardio. Now that I've burned through glycogen use, it triggers an increase or sort of hypermetabolic response that will demand more free fatty acid usage. Now I go into cardio and my glycogen levels have been reduced. Now my body's ability to start accessing the beta oxidative component of bioenergetics is going to be heightened. I should generally be able to now technically burn more calories, have greater anabolic activity. Why? Because my resistance training done first allowed me, because I'm not fatigued, to train harder, right? To train harder with generally heavier resistance, or even for muscle endurance training. So I hope that makes sense. Don't do your cardio. You get tired, you get fatigued, and you're not able to generally tap in and get a full reduction or a full use of glycogen storage like you get when you do your resistance training first. So what's the definitive answer? Do your resistance training first. You can train harder. You can tap into glycogen stores that you're generally not tapping into as at the same level when you do your cardio. Get the idea? So don't do cardio. You're going to fatigue your muscles. Now I go to my resistance training. I can't use as much weight. Is it more complicated than that? Well, of course it's more complicated than that. Can you explain that to your clients? I hope you can, and I hope it's beneficial to you as well. If you got any questions, let us know. By the way, if you want full access to becoming a certified and qualified personal trainer, please click on the link in the description box below. Leave the comments. I'm sure many folks will either agree, and if you disagree, please let us know. Got to give me a good answer, though. Give me a good physiological response. Always like to have conversations on physiology. If it's helpful, though, please type the word understand in there as well. Head on over to our Facebook group. If you haven't subscribed, like I said earlier, please subscribe to our channel. The like button is really helpful as well for us. It's great. It's great providing information to trainers and would-be trainers so you can help people in the fitness industry. Enjoy doing it. We'll see you next week. Take care.